pretty, Kathy. Come on and give the Lord a shout of praise in the house. Hallelujah. For the Lord of Lords and King of Kings, He is awesome and worthy to be praised. Good morning, church. This indeed is the day that the Lord has made. Let us all rejoice and be glad in it. And I just got one question I want to ask. Is there anyone that's excited about being in God's house today? Amen. I will not forgive. And so I think it's a topic we need to talk about because there's a whole lot of people suffering because they refuse to forgive. There's a whole lot of people silently suffering because they have been hurt, they have been let down, brokenhearted, and disappointed by someone else. And so we need to deal with this and deal with it from a biblical perspective and talk about this F-bomb, talk about forgiveness. Can we do that today? Amen. Amen. Since the beginning of time, man has found himself struggling. Of course, man had a relationship with God that was secure, that was stable. He had a relationship with God that was fresh and fluid. It was a healthy relationship. God, of course, created woman, and we, of course, were introduced to the first institution ever established, which was family and all of that. They had children, so on and so forth. In the early parts of humanity and creation, things were perfect. God and man were in harmony one with another, and there seemed to be no issues until man rebelled against God and disobeyed God and did opposite of what God told man. And as a result thereof, sin entered into the world. We know this story. We've heard this story many, many, many times. So as a result of sin now entering into the world, what had taken place was there's this disruption with fellowship between man and God, and there's disruption with the relationship between mankind. Y'all stay with me, I'm going somewhere. All right. And so now mankind has a propensity. There's a proclivity that man would fall out one with another, that there would be differences and disagreements that would cause them to be at odds with one another. And so when they find themselves at odds with one another, there's friction in the relationship. Something is wrong. And because something is wrong, something now needs to take place to make right the wrong. Are y'all hearing me on today? So, with this division that now takes place, it puts mankind in a dilemma. Because there's something that exists. There's this wedge and there's this tension that we need to deal with. Otherwise, our relationship is going to suffer. All right. That dilemma has continued throughout all generations. That dilemma has continued throughout all oughts and or problems and or disagreements and or disappointments when it comes to our fellow man and comes to our fellow brother and or sister. We need to learn how to forgive. Forgiveness is something that we have to extend to one another if we want to make our relationships right. That's not easy to hear, and it's not easy to do, but it must be done. Which brings me to this. Within the course of this past week, we have witnessed something that has dominated perhaps you've heard of it. It's Amber Geiger, who was a former police officer in the Dallas area, was just recently tried and convicted of murder. If you're not familiar with the story, Google it. I won't go into all the detail, but supposedly she was mistaken on the apartment that she entered into, thinking it was her own, entered into the apartment of Mr. Botham, Gene Botham, I believe is his first name, who was an African-American male, she a Caucasian female. And he was sitting in his room, in his living room, in his house, in his apartment, eating ice cream and watching TV. She entered into the home and supposedly fearing for her life because she was thinking that her apartment was being burglarized because she mistakenly went into the wrong apartment, drew her service weapon and shot him in cold blood. So the trial that took place last week was dealing with that particular issue, and she was 10 years. Many people were in an uproar and upset because they didn't think that sentence was fair, thought it was too light. And so there was already tension going back and forth. But then something happened that stole the spotlight from this outrageous story, unbelievable story about how someone could mistakenly go into an apartment thinking it was theirs, go in and end up shooting someone and killing them and all of that. The spotlight was taken from the 10 years, which seems to be a light sentence. The spotlight was stolen from all of that and placed on a singular incident that took place in the courtroom. And it was in the courtroom, in the witness stand, where Gene Botham's younger brother sat there and I don't want you to go to jail. And most importantly, I don't want you to go to hell. And then he looks at the judge and he says, can I hug her? And there was some exchange that took place that was inaudible, that most of us could not hear. And then he repeats himself. He says, can I hug her, please? Can I give her a hug? And the judge gives consent and permission. And he immediately flees from the witness stand. And Amber jumps from her seat, and they both meet in the middle of the courtroom and begin to embrace one another, rocking and embracing, and hugging and rocking and embracing. Breaking intermittently to exchange conversation of some sort, whispering in one another's ear, and then going back to hugging and embracing and rocking one another, and repeating that for at least 2 or 3 or 4 times. This became the main topic, trending on social media, that this young man did the unthinkable, the unbelievable, and the unimaginable. He dropped the F-bomb. And he forgave the woman who had just recently killed his brother. And it caused great discussion and debate, and people to be in division as they debated back and forth whether or not this was a good move or a bad move. There were those who said, absolutely not, she should not be forgiven. And then there were those who marveled at his courage and ability and capacity to muster up enough strength to reach out to the one who had taken a life from his family, and to, in that moment of passion, say, I forgive you. And I want your soul to be right with Jesus. This is what Botham would want. This is what this young man said, and this is what has caused a great uproar all around the nation. So my brothers and my sisters, when we begin to think about this whole concept of forgiveness, I want to suggest to you that there are 2 responses that we offer and that we render when it comes to being hurt. When someone has done us wrong, when someone has done us dirty, when someone has afflicted us, whether they have hurt us directly or whether they have caused hurt and harm upon someone that we love, there's one of 2 responses, one of 2 reactions. The first one is a natural response. Let the church say natural response. Natural response. And the second is a supernatural response. There's going to be one of two reactions, one of two responses from mankind when we've been wrong, when we've been hurt, when someone has presented us with some discomfort. There's going to be one of two reactions when it comes to this whole concept of forgiveness. There's going to be a natural reaction to it or a supernatural reaction to it. The natural response usually desires, watch this, revenge, retaliation, or retribution. When you have a natural response and reaction to someone hurting you and someone doing you wrong, the natural response and reaction is to get them back.
Right.
You want to seek some form of revenge. You want to retaliate. You want them to hurt as much as you hurt. You want them to be in pain. You want them to suffer because they did you wrong. They did you dirty. So there's retaliation or there's revenge or there is retribution. You want them to repay. You want them to provide some form of restitution. You need to pay for this somehow. I'm not going to allow you just to go on with your life while I suffer because of something you did to me. That's the natural response. Mm-hmm. But I told you not only is there a natural response, there is a what?
Supernatural.
A supernatural response.
Right.
And so the supernatural response desires, watch this, repair, reconciliation, and restoration. So the supernatural response and reaction to you hurting me, you doing me wrong, and you doing me dirty is not revenge, it's not retaliation, and it's not retribution or reparations. What it is repair.
Okay.
How can I repair this relationship? Because the relationship matters more to me.
Yeah.
How can I reconcile with my brother or sister, my fellow man that has done me wrong? Or how can I restore things?
Yeah.
That's the supernatural response. And I need to tell you that the natural response is easy because it caters to and accommodates our flesh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The supernatural response, not so much. Why? Because it relies upon the spirit that lives inside of us, in particular as believers. It relies upon us connecting with God and us displaying the love of God in a way that seems to be unheard of, unimaginable, and unthinkable when someone has done you wrong.
Right. That's good. Come on.
God says to us, vengeance is mine. It doesn't belong to you. And so therefore, since vengeance doesn't belong to you, you and I don't have the right to go and seek revenge or retaliation when someone does us wrong. This is not an easy pill to swallow. This is not an easy practice to incorporate into our lives. That's why one is natural response and reaction, while the other is supernatural. It's supernatural because it requires power that is beyond us and that is bigger than us and has the greater capacity to do things that our flesh is unable to do.
Amen.
So we got to ask ourselves, as children of God, as disciples of the Most High, we must ask ourselves, which response will be my response? When I am hurt, when I'm done wrong, when I'm done dirty, when someone offends me, am I going to respond in a natural way and seek retaliation and revenge and retribution? Or am I going to respond in a supernatural way? Call upon the God of the universe to give me the ability and the capacity, watch this, and the compassion to love and to reconcile and to repair and to restore. I think that's a really good question. As children of God, you are forced with asking and answering this question, for yourself. Going forward, we can't talk about what has happened in the past because we can't change that. But going forward, what are you going to do when you're wrong? So was this man Botham's brother? Was he wrong in what he did? Was he right in what he did? Was it indeed the Christian thing to do? I'll let you decide based upon what I just told you. So here we have, my brothers and my sisters, an interesting dilemma. But watch this. When it comes to balanced and biblical forgiveness, Christ does something for us that helps us to materialize and to actualize what forgiveness ought to be about. Let me show you. One thing that Christ does is he mandates it. He mandates forgiveness. How do I know that? Because he commands us to forgive. It's something that he tells us as children of God we ought to do and we must do. But not only does he mandate it and command us to do so, he matches it. When watch this. He says we must forgive if we want God to forgive us. You ever seen that in the Bible? You ever heard of that concept before? And so if we want God to forgive us, then we must learn to forgive others. He matches our forgiveness. When we extend it towards others, he gladly extends it toward us.
Amen.
Wait a minute. Not only does he mandate it, not only does he match it, watch this, he models it.
All right.
Where do you get that from, Pastor?
Come on.
Well, he modeled it in many instances, but one in particular, I think it was, after he had been beaten with a cat of nine tails. And after they had spat in his face, and after they had plucked hair from his beard and whipped him repeatedly and spat in his face, after he had walked down the winding streets of Jerusalem, the Villa de Rosa, with a crossbeam on his shoulder, and as he was hoisted high, after they pierced him in his side, where blood and water began to gush out, after they had hammered nails in his hand, and after they had hammered nails in his and spikes in his feet, and after they had pressed a crown of thorns into his skull, laughed at him and left him up there to die and ridiculed him. After they had done all that, he hung him on that cross and had the unmitigated gall and the audacity to call upon God the Father and utter these words, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So he didn't only mandate it and say this is something that you must do. He didn't only match it by saying when you do it, I will do it unto you, but he modeled it and said, let me show you how it's done. Amen. He hung up on that cross and asked for forgiveness for the ones who crucified him. So I'll again let you be the judge and you determine which route we ought to go when it comes to the natural response and reaction, or when it comes to the supernatural response and or reaction. If you call yourself a child of the Most High God, if you call yourself a disciple, then my brothers and my sisters, we have to forgive. Amen. So then this raises a very interesting question. What is forgiveness?
All right.
Is that a pretty good question? Is that a question that you would like the answer to? What is forgiveness? Now, I can ask all of y'all to give me a definition of forgiveness, and guess what? Everyone's definition will pretty much be different. There have some similarities in there, and there'll be a common thread in all of that. But for the most part, there will be different answers on what forgiveness really is. So there's no ambiguity as it relates to what it is that I'm sharing with you on today. So there is no question and no doubt. I want to give you a working definition. I want to suggest to you, I want to submit to you a working definition that we can use so we can move forward. Because if I'm suggesting to you that we ought to forgive, and I'm saying to you that Christ mandates it and he matches it and he models it, then we ought to at least have a common definition on what it means. So first of all, what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is, watch this. Forgiveness is a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness or not. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, nor does it mean condoning or excusing offenses. This is from Berkeley Education. Listen. Let me break it down just a little bit. Forgiveness is a conscious, let the church say conscious. That means you are fully aware of what you're doing. It is a deliberate decision. So that means you make it, and you make it on purpose. You ought not be coerced into doing it. You ought not be guilted into doing it. You ought not be forced into doing it. You ought to make a conscious decision for yourself to deliberately extend to another forgiveness. And in doing so, what you're doing is you're releasing, you release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward whoever the person is, or whoever the group is, or whatever the issue is. You release them and it. And watch this. It's regardless if they deserve it or not. See, that right there blows our mind. When we talk about a supernatural response and reaction to forgiveness or to hurt and to wrongs, it does not matter if they deserve it or not. You still make a conscious, deliberate decision to forgive. So now what this does is it removes the demand that we place upon people, or when it comes to forgiveness, we have stipulations that the person has to say, I'm sorry. Or that the person has to take ownership, or the person has to take accountability, and so on and so on. We come up with all these stipulations. And in a perfect world, it would be nice, it would be good, it would be healthy, it would be wonderful if persons did just that. Said, I'm sorry. I own my behavior. I take accountability for my actions. It would be great if they did that. But regardless if they do it or not, guess what? That ought not sway and or prevent you from forgiving.
Come on.
So in a real sense, whether you have an audience with that person or not, whether you're able to confront that person or not, we still have an expectation and a supernatural reaction to a response to it, to forgive.
Yeah. That's good.
I debated whether or not I would share this as a personal example, but I'll go ahead and share it anyway. It's a rather sensitive matter, and we're Facebook Live and YouTube and everything else, but it is what it is. Growing up, many of you, most of you know part of my testimony, part of my story. That I grew up in a household where there was a great deal of domestic violence. My stepfather in particular was very abusive, physically, emotional, and mentally abusive to my mother. And I had to witness that all throughout my childhood. And there was one incident in particular, though this was rather frequent and all throughout my life, there was one incident that stands out in my mind more than others. I was making ready to work my first cedar job. Those of you from back in the day remember they had the CETA program, and we would work those CETA jobs. And I was about to start my CETA job, and I was excited about it. So the next day was my first day to go and report to my assignment. And I remember in the middle of the night being awakened at around 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning to screams, hollers, and yells. And as I mustered up enough strength to come out of my sleep and slumber and find and track down the source of my disturbance and where all this yelling and hollering was coming from, I found myself on the front porch of our house. And it was there that I witnessed my stepfather beating my mother senselessly. She was beaten so badly that, for those of you who I'm dating myself, but for those of you who remember the Elephant Man, her face was that disfigured and distorted and swollen. Just in that incident of domestic violence, her face and her head was swollen. I didn't even recognize my own mother. And I, as a young 15-year-old traumatized boy, had made up in my mind that I was going to take my stepfather out. I even made attempts, and he doesn't know to this day unless he's watching this video. If it was the last thing that I would do, it was I was going to get him for what he did to my mother. And we had fights, he and I. Me, trying to defend my mother and all that. We went back and forth on that. And so for years, I hated him. Strong word, but true. That's what I felt in my heart. Hate. Wanted him to no longer be here. Whatever that meant and whatever that looked like. Y'all read between the lines. And for years, I planned and plotted on how I was going to make that happen. But each time I attempted to, something, I now know what that something was. Someone, I now know who that someone was, prevented me each and every time. And there was one time, he doesn't know this to this day unless he's watching, as he slept there, as I had an instrument ready in his sleep to make things right in my mind, there was a presence that blocked me and took over me and kept me from doing what I had planned in my heart. He doesn't know this. So let's fast forward this. All these years, his hate was inside of my heart. And I recall a particular incident when I was teaching to the youth. I was a youth pastor at the time. And I was talking to them about love and forgiveness and all these things. And I'm up there and I'm preaching and I'm waxing eloquently and I'm giving it to them. And youth are really engaged and so on and so forth. And it was at that moment that I realized that I'm teaching on something that I had not yet done myself. And all of a sudden, this overwhelming sense and power took over me and fell upon me. And all I could do was stand there in the midst of all of these young teens. All I could do was stand there and weep. They had no idea what was going on. I really had no idea what was going on. But all I knew is that in the midst of my tears, I was washing away years of unforgiveness. It was at that moment that I no longer felt hate in my heart, but I felt love. I no longer wanted retribution or retaliation or revenge. I had feelings of restoration and reconciliation, and I didn't want bad for him. I wanted good for him. I forgave him and never even had a conversation with him. He never said to me, I'm sorry. He never said to me, I hurt your mother. He never said to me, I take ownership and responsibility. It was not necessary. I chose to forgive. It was a conscientious, deliberate decision that I made, and it was a supernatural reaction. And I, at that moment, was able to release and forgive him. and have not felt any ill feelings toward him ever since. So I came to this realization a couple years ago, last summer, summer before last. I went to California where he lives now. And I went and I hung out and we spent time together. And hung out and drove around and chatted and did all these things. And when he comes to town, we hang out and we chat and talk and all that. And so I came to this revelation that I want to share with you. It is evident and obvious that forgiveness has materialized in your life has taken place in your life. Watch this. When you can be confronted with the one who hurt you and it no longer hurt you. Preach, Pastor Sanders. When you can be confronted with the one who hurt you or the thing that hurt you and it no longer hurt you, that's a good indication that you're on a path toward forgiveness that extends reconciliation, restoration, and repair. And I have no ill feelings toward him. I have nothing but love for him now. So what I'm saying to you, and I took my time to share that personal and intimate story because I want you to see that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, nor does it mean condoning or excusing offenses. But what it means and what it does is that you have chosen to release your feelings of resentment and vengeance. And you don't have to have that person in front of you, nor do they have to say, I'm sorry. If you put those stipulations on it, then it may never take place, and you will continue to be in bondage. Are y'all hearing me on today? Here's another definition. Forgiveness is the release and relief from debt. It is to pardon, it is to loose, and to let go. I think I just said something there. The Greek word that we use in the New Testament when it comes to forgiveness is a word that carries with it the connotation and or puts you in the mindset of a banker and or a debtor and someone who is in debt. And so the debtor says to the one who's in debt, you are released. You are free. You no longer owe me. Okay, let's see if I can put it in better terms. For those of you who have closed on a house, you have gone through financing to acquire that house. And though you take residence up in that house, and you live there, and you call that house your house, that house really ain't your house until you pay that house off. Until that time, it belongs to the bank or belongs to the mortgage company or a financial institution that has loaned you the money or whatever the scenario might be. So once it has been paid and or satisfied, watch this. The one who holds the title deed now is able to give you the title deed and say, this belongs to you. Your debt has been satisfied. Your debt is clear. Are y'all hearing me?
Come on.
So when we talk about forgiveness, you will hear the term used oftentimes in banking that it has been forgiven, or when a creditor writes it off or sells it, you no longer are responsible for that debt. That's what forgiveness is. It means the burden and or the debt that was placed upon you has been removed. You hurt me. You did me wrong. You did me dirty. But I forgive you. Okay, let me give you another instance. Listen, it says release and relief from debt, but also it goes on to say it is to pardon and or to loose. And so when you pardon someone, that means that you restore I told y'all recently, some time ago, a couple weeks, months ago, I told you about when my childhood activities and behaviors caused me to get caught up with the judicial system. And as a result of that, I had some things on my record. And many of you know that I've been in restorative justice and helping people to restore their lives that have criminal pasts and what have you. And I've been helping all these people until it dawned upon me after an attorney said to me, why have you not done it for yourself? And it was at that moment that I submitted paperwork and I got my record set aside and I got a pardon. And so what the pardon said to me is you are released. You are no longer responsible. These criminal charges and the effects thereof that may have prevented you have been removed. So guess what? If you go and pull a criminal record on me and background, because it has been pardoned, you won't see it. Why? Because I've been forgiven. In the Christian context, what it means is, that's when we get our Christian doctrine on justification, just as if I've never sinned. That's where we get righteousness from. We're in right standing. That's where we get forgiveness from. If the debt has been paid, the pardon has been extended, you are no longer under that cloud. That ought to make you shout and rejoice. And so if the God of the universe can give you a pardon for all of your sin, and if he can give you forgiveness and cleanse you of your spiritual debt, the Bible says, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. And so the fact that you no longer have to go to hell, but instead you now have the ability to spend eternal life with God. And when you think about that, that ought to make you weep. That ought to make you cry. It ought to make you rejoice to know that God has that much capacity to forgive you of all your sins and to restore you and to reconcile and to repair relationship. Why? Because of redemption. That's what Christ's sacrifice on the cross means. You have been redeemed. And therefore you've been restored.
Yeah, that's good.
So my brothers and my sisters, it really means to release and release from debt. It is to pardon and to loose and to let go. But you know what? I've got a lot more to say. So I'm going to chunk this message into part 1 and part 2.
Amen.
And I'm going to save the rest for next week.
All right.
I think I've given you a lot right now.
Yes,
I'm going a little bit longer than I want to. So I'm going to stop here and let you come back next week and get the rest of this.
Amen.
But today's takeaway, as we talk about the F-bomb and dealing with a balanced biblical perspective on forgiveness, the greatest takeaway today is I want you to leave here knowing this, is that if you don't forgive and if you continue to harbor hate and hurt in your heart, you will continue to hurt yourself. You will hinder yourself from moving forward. And there's a great chance that you will not experience healing and health and happiness. You've got to forgive. So regardless of what we think of this young man who displayed forgiveness in the courtroom, you can feel how you want to feel. But at the end of the day, it's therapeutic and it's necessary. Amen. And after all, Christ mandates it. He commands that we do it. He matches it. When we do it, he does it back to us. And he modeled it when he hung up on the cross and died for your sins and mine. Amen. Amen. We receive that good God support.